to another episode of Webinar Wednesday. It's great to have you all with us. You know, Melissa mentions that we've been doing these webinars now for 18 months, and it occurs to me that I'm actually this month celebrating my 6-year anniversary as a team member here at ATS Lab Midwest. So I've been doing this for 6 years. It's been a great 6 years, but it got me to thinking about technology and how it changes. You know, when I first got into this business, I asked some people because I have an interest in renewable energy, an interest in alternative sources of energy. And I would ask folks, you know, is this a popular topic in education? And the answer that I got most often was, you know, it was maybe 3-4 years ago, at that time, 2015. So we would have been into maybe 2010. But they said that interest in that technology and interested in educating people for careers in alternative industry and alternative energy had waned, which I always thought interesting. Well, now here we are in the year 2021, and I can tell you that one of the most frequent questions we get from technical educators is on this topic we're talking about today, which is that of renewable energy. It's almost like in these 10 years, we've gone back to the future. That's right. One of my favorite films, I saw it for the first time in 1985, which is dating myself a little bit. I can still remember where I saw it. I can still remember when I saw it. And I am still friends with the people with whom I saw it. I love this movie. I love movies about time travel in general. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is the best one, by the way, but we'll save that topic for another webinar Wednesday, perhaps. But it's because I love this movie that what I saw 2 weeks ago caught my attention. I was driving down the interstate from Menasha, Wisconsin, where I had been visiting an industrial employer, to our tech center in Mequon, Wisconsin, down Highway 41, and what should come screaming by me but the DeLorean time machine from Back to the Future, or at least a really good replica of it. It turns out there's some guy that lives in Southeast Wisconsin who shares my fascination with this film, maybe a little more maniacal than I am, because he actually built his own DeLorean time machine. Now, if you remember this vehicle, you also remember the amount of power that is required to power its flux capacitor. And that amount of power, of course, is 1.21 gigawatts. Now, that is a ton of power. But if we wanted to go get that amount of power, where would we go? Well, one option would be, yes, Amazon. We can actually get that amount of power from Amazon. How, you say? Well, look at this article that we saw in the Wall Street Journal about 2 weeks ago, back on the 23rd of the month of June, where Amazon is announcing commitments to buy 1.5 gigawatts of production capacity in solar and wind plants around the world to produce enough renewable energy to power all of their activities by the year 2025. Now, I was never really good with math, but I am good enough to know that the 1.5 gigawatts that's produced by Amazon through its investment in these wind and solar plants is greater than the 1.21 gigawatts that Doc said would be required to fuel our travel through time. That is a lot of power. 1.5 gigawatts is the amount of power that could be produced by 5.2 million solar panels. It's the amount of energy that would power 110 million LEDs. It's the amount of energy created by 3,000 Corvette engines, or for that matter, by 2.5 million horses stampeding around a racetrack. Imagine how big that racetrack would have to be to power, to hold 2.5 stampeding horses. Speaking of stampedes, that is exactly what is happening in the world of renewable energy. According to Michael Terrell, the director of energy at Google, it's almost like we're in the middle of a stampede for clean energy. A stampede for clean energy. What's driving all this? It's what we call the exponential economy. We talk about this a lot on Webinar Wednesday, this idea that products are doubling in price performance every 12 to 18 months, being driven by what we call Moore's Law, again, a topic for another webinar. But our producer, Melissa Martin, and my colleague, Melissa Martin, found this really, really interesting article in the New York Times that talks about, for several decades, experts have consistently underestimated the declines in price and the improvements in performance and subsequent speed of adoption of renewable power. It's really interesting the way that they look at this. They say, unlike fossil fuels, as we take them out of the ground, as we mine them, as we use them, we have less and less of them as we consume them. Now, the law of supply and demand tells us as we use more of something and we have less of it, not less supply, and the demand stays the same, or goes up, price is going to go up with it. Renewable energy is different. They call this a virtual flywheel because solar panels, wind turbines, all of this technology we use to produce this energy keeps getting cheaper. And as it gets cheaper, we use more of it. And as we use more of it, we find less expensive ways to manufacture the technology, which in turn drives down price. A really, really interesting and cool set of trends. That is why we are today doing this webinar on alternative and renewable energy. It's one of the many ways that we market and produce and present solutions to the world of technical education. Now, we make here at the company that underwrites Webinar Wednesday tremendous investments in marketing. People like Melissa and her team don't come inexpensive, and they're really, really good at what they do. We invest tremendous amounts in social media and podcasts and webinars and trade shows, all of these investments in marketing. But you know, some of the best marketing you get comes for free. Earlier this year, the Vice President of the United States visited the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and did an entire press conference standing in front of one of the solutions that we had partnered with that organization on, the alternative energy learning system from a company called Amatrol. So we can spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing, and then we get that picture for free. That was a really, really good day in the life of ATS Midwest. So now today we are going to talk about trends in renewable energy in the world of education. Our guest today is somebody who puts the equivalent of 1.21 gigawatts into his relationships with his clients, with his distributors, with the world of technical education, day in and day out. He's one of my very best friends in this business, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you and to welcome on to Webinar Wednesday my friend Jason Everett. Jason, thanks so much for being with us.
Well, thank you, Matt, for that great introduction. That's 1.21 gigawatts. That's tough for me to live up to.
Well, you're gonna show that you do it today in this webinar, and we know that your subject matter expertise in this topic is going to be really, really interesting to our clients. So I want to start out with this. We think about technology, we think about advancing technology in the world of alternative and renewable energy. Lots and lots of different types of career choices available for students, for people looking at what they want to do with the rest of their life or the next phase of their life. What can you tell our audience about career opportunities in the world of renewable energy?
Well, they're 100% growing. There's definitely a need for field technicians in the solar fields, in the wind farms. There's a lot of opportunities for installation and construction of anything from residential size wind and solar to commercial to the big utility scale wind and solar fields. There's also a need for controls technicians, those people that monitor the SCADA softwares, the smart sensors that monitor the efficiencies of these systems. So there's a lot of need for controls technicians. There's also opportunities in manufacturing these solar panels, manufacturing wind turbines, and all the components that are needed for the smart grid. And then, last but not least, something near and dear to me, because this is what I do every day, technical sales, those people that go out and do the energy audits, that design the systems, that do the cost benefit analysis on solar and wind applications. There's a big need for those, and those people have to have that technical ability and know the technologies before they go out and talk to the end user. So there's a lot of opportunities.
You know, you think about the career opportunities that were available back in the age of Back to the Future, 30, 35 years ago, and how those career opportunities have evolved, Jason, into the ones that you just referenced on the technical side, the control side, the business development, and the sales side. Some really, really fascinating opportunities for our young people as they consider their career choices. Now, so are you seeing the same trend that we referenced at the beginning of the discussion? Are you seeing a little bit more interest in this whole world of education around renewable energy and renewable technology of late?
Yeah, absolutely. I started 1 year before you, so 7 years here at Amatrol, a previous life in manufacturing, but 7 years ago at Amatrol, not a whole lot of interest in wind and solar programs. And as it went, on a couple years, it even got less and less interest. But right now, we're seeing a huge resurgence in wind and solar, and it's due to a couple, several different driving factors. One is the efficiencies of the solar panels. The average panel conversion efficiency has increased from 15 to over 20%. This has driven down the solar energy cost to 3 to 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Compared to fossil fuels, it's between 5 and 17 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's more efficient solar power. We're seeing the same thing on wind. So if you look at wind in North Dakota, one of the Lab Midwest states, this is one of the fastest growing career opportunities, if not nationally, with up to 100% increase in employment by 2026. So not too far away. And then if you look at the new, I know you showed Vice President Harris, but the new Biden administration has already pledged $2 trillion in infrastructure and clean energy with the goal of net zero emissions by 2050. That seems like a long way away, but it's really not that far away. So this has driven companies, traditional oil companies like BP, Exxon, Shell, Chevron, to make more investments in these renewable technologies. So yes, we have seen a ton of interest in renewables. And then, since COVID, I've gone back into the office several times, taken a tour of our manufacturing plant, and I'm seeing a lot of wind turbine trainers, a lot of solar trainers going through our manufacturing plant in Jeffersonville, Indiana. So that makes me think that, yeah, there is a big resurgence in renewables going on right now.
Fantastic. So we've got this resurgence in interest in renewable energy in the world of education. We have some really interesting career choices for our young people as they enter the workforce. I'm curious, Jason, on competencies. What is it that students who are entering the world of alternative energy, who are choosing careers in this emerging technology, in this growing field, what are the things that they're learning? What do they need to know to be successful when they get there?
Well, I think at the most basic level, you need to not have a general knowledge of power generation and how we deliver power energy to the end user, understanding of the smart grid, then an understanding of how we use wind and solar technologies to produce this electricity and put the systems on the grid. In addition to that, an understanding of electricity, motors, controls, PLCs, SCADA systems, even basic mechanical and hydraulic fluid power skills are needed in this area to be technicians, and the ability to troubleshoot. We talk about that a lot of times in manufacturing, but those wind turbines in this picture fail from time to time, and we need technicians to climb that pole and troubleshoot these systems. So there's also competencies in site analysis. So what it comes down to with solar and wind, it's always a cost benefit analysis. If the sun doesn't shine in this territory, in this area of the country, it's not going to be beneficial to put in a solar plant. Same way, if the wind doesn't blow, it's not going to be beneficial to put in a wind plant. So site analysis is one of those competencies, and the ability to go out and do these calculations and do these energy audits and come up with designing the best solution for the local area and the end user. So yeah, a lot of different competencies.
Lots and lots of competencies, and not all of them directly related to the, necessarily the alternative energy itself or the renewable energy. We think about the wind turbines, we think about photovoltaic cells and so on. But a lot of the things that you just referenced are, some nuts and bolts, basic mechanical and industrial skills as well, and have a fair amount of overlap in the world of industry and in the world of industrial mechanics as examples. So just interesting to see the commonality and the differences between what we might find in a renewable energy program and what we might find in a typical technical program, for instance, at a technical or a community college. Now, delivering these competencies and teaching these skills and abilities to our students, there's a lot of creative ways to do that. And I think we've seen this, especially in the wake of COVID. You mentioned a while ago, the resurgence from COVID, but we're bringing some best practices with us out of COVID that I think proliferated in a lot of ways, one of them being e-learning. Now, is there e-learning available for the world of alternative and renewable energy that our audience might be interested in leveraging?
Absolutely. So if you know anything about Amatrol, our pizza pie consists of over 1,000, 2,000 hours of online curriculum built around mechatronics, industrial maintenance, uh, different technologies related to advanced manufacturing and mechanical systems. But we also have this other pie over here for green energy. So we have about 250 hours of online curriculum, and this is one great screenshot here. It's not just the PDF that pops up where you have to read a book online. It's interactive multimedia online e-learning. 250 hours located on our learning management system is able to score them to your learning management system at your school. But anything from site planning, installation, power generation, energy storage, batteries, grid tie, data acquisition, troubleshooting these renewable energies. We do have e-learning available for that.
Interesting. And, I should mention to our audience, by the way, that our guest today is my friend Jason Everett, who's telling us all about renewable energy. So if you're just joining us, having a great discussion about the new trends in education, new trends in alternative and renewable energy, how we deliver the learning. One way is the one that Jason just referenced and spoke about, which is e-learning. Now, we also know, Jason, that individuals who find their way into these types of careers, technicians, engineers, they tend to be the kind of people that are hands-on and kinesthetic. They like learning and doing and making, and learning by doing and making, as opposed to necessarily just learning theory. I know your e-learning solutions provide a lot of really interactive opportunities for those students so that you can tap into that aspect of how they learn. But hands-on skills are important as well. We touched on in our introduction, the vice president standing in front of one of your alternative energy learning systems. So tell us about, once we get through that e-learning, once we know the theory, how are students demonstrating and learning the competencies that they need from a physical and hands-on standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. As a whole, Amatrol produces and manufactures about 200 different types of hands-on learning systems that are aligned to our online curriculum. In the renewable and green energy technologies, there's about 10 or 15 training systems built around wind and solar that align to that provide the hands-on components, test the skills, create the skills, the students simulate the skills that they would do out in the field. So anything from solar concept, site planning, solar PV installation, solar PV troubleshooting, open and closed loop, solar thermal trainers, and then solar thermal installation if we're talking about solar training systems. When we talk about wind, we have anything from small scale wind up to utility scale wind. So we actually simulate the utility scale wind training systems, the big nacelles that you would see out in the wind farms of southern Minnesota, western North Dakota, those big nacelles that are 100 feet in the air. We have 3 different trainers that simulate 1, the nacelle, 2, the generator, and 3, the hub, so that students can learn about the technologies for each one of those systems, learn how to troubleshoot those technologies standing on the ground without climbing up the pole. So that makes their time when they climb up the pole and actually do the troubleshooting in the field 100 feet up in the air a little bit more efficient if they can do that on the ground. And last but not least, there's a really great trainer here that Vice President Harris is standing in front of that teaches the foundational learning of wind and solar. So this is a combination wind and solar trainer. This is more geared towards the residential installation. So it's small scale wind, small scale solar, but it's great for high school programs. It's great for introductory programs for green technology. Simulates the operation, performance, storage, batteries, those types of systems that are used for small scale wind and solar. So that's the 850 AEC, the combination wind and solar trainer.
So an absolute awesome trainer for the world of alternative energy. We certainly thank the Vice President for featuring it in her press conference recently. Like we said in the introduction, you can't pay for that kind of marketing. So that was absolutely wonderful to see. I want to just close out our questions here before we ask Melissa what's coming over from the audience. Jason, just to talk about maybe people who are already in the workforce. So we've talked about students, high school students, technical community college students who are learning these competencies and programs designed to turn them into technicians to work in the world of alternative energy, to work in the world of renewable energy. There's also people who are already in the workforce, incumbent workers who are employed by energy companies. Maybe they were already working around this technology. But as you suggested a couple of answers ago, technology that's really rapidly advancing, thanks in large part to the exponential economy. So if I'm an incumbent worker, if I'm somebody who employs an individual who is already working in the world of renewable energy, as this technology changes and I need to upskill my workforce, how do I go about doing that?
Oh, I think there's a lot of great programs at your local technical college, community college, maybe even career center that does adult ed. There's a lot of companies out there doing professional development and continuing education using our systems. Just a quick Google search, there's a lot of online degrees, 2, 4 year degrees in sustainability, clean energy, renewables. There's just a lot of opportunities for this type of training. And like I said, 7 years ago, uh, it was pretty bare out there, but there was just a definite resurgence over the last 6 months to a year. And then if you think about the coastlines, offshore wind, that's even another aspect of this where there's a lot of groups interested in this technology and wanting to get trained.
Outstanding. So lots and lots of opportunities as well in the world of training our incumbent workers and lots of options. We see that not just in renewable energy, but industry in general. One of the fastest growing sectors in our business is employers and companies that are trying to figure out how to upskill their own workforces. And certainly many times, as you suggest, Jason, they do that in partnership with a local community and technical college, or in some cases go it alone and institute their own training programs in partnership with those colleges, but right at the place of employment. So really interesting trends happening in the world of upskilling our incumbent workforce in the wake of the shortage of skilled talent here in the United States. With that, Melissa, I want to invite you back onto the stage and let's hear what's coming over from our audience during this really interesting discussion we're having with Jason Everett from Amatrol.
Thanks, Matt. And again, to our audience, if you do have questions, please use that Q&A box you'll see in your Zoom control panel. You can submit your questions there and I will read them aloud to our panelists. All right, first question that came through. I'm a principal and I do want to do more with renewable energy here at the high school. Are there specific courses you've seen other schools embed the renewable energy curriculum in, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question there. One thing I should comment on is that the younger generation high school students are really interested in green technologies. They have a passion for sustainability and environmentally conscious. So a lot of high school programs are implementing these as training programs for green energy, built around fundamental electricity programs. So teaching the students fundamentals of electricity, maybe some residential wiring, then tapping into the green energies with introduction to solar and wind systems, how they produce electricity and how you get that electricity on the grid, how we do a site analysis, and then hands-on trainers on a system like the one in the background here that's the combination small scale wind and solar. That teaches them the fundamentals, and to take it beyond that, I see high school programs take it to the next level where they go out and do an installation at their school. Maybe a school that builds a house, some of these career centers build houses for the local community, maybe do an installation of the solar panels or a wind, residential wind trainer, application on those types of buildings. So it's more of a project-based learning of green technology. So yeah, I see a lot of high school programs interested in this, and they do, and this is a great trainer to start on.
Excellent. Thanks, Jason. Matt, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
I would just add, Melissa, that Amatrol is doing some amazing things. I agree with Jason as they're preparing technicians, getting young people interested. in this technology, and certainly a great go-to and a great set of solutions. As we move maybe a little bit earlier into the educational pathway, and we're getting middle school students, maybe early high school students interested in alternative energy technology, we see some really cool solutions coming from a company called Lex Solar out of Germany. And it's a great way to teach not just wind turbines, PVs, energy storage, battery technology, but also the data analytics that go along in many cases with alternative energy. So a great way to introduce students from that standpoint. I would also say the e-learning solutions from LJ Create are outstanding in that space as well. So it's really about creating a continuum from initially getting young people excited about that technology, inspiring them towards careers as technicians, maybe engineers, and even on into four-year university and postgraduate programs that study alternative energy and renewable energy as well.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one more audience question. Jason, I'm going to pose this to you first from maybe a more broader national point of view, and then Matt, if you know anything specific in our region. Do you know of funding available, either grants or otherwise, for to bolster my alternative energy program?
Yeah, I think there's CARES Act money out there, ESSER funding for the high schools. There seems to be a lot of grant funding out there in many different states from a national perspective. We haven't seen the green energy rebates that we used to see back 10 years ago, but I kind of have a feeling that that's something in the near future, maybe with this new infrastructure bill, that maybe we would see those again. But for right now, what we're seeing, most of the money coming from to fund these types of programs is from CARES Act money, national ESSER funding, maybe some Perkins funding also. So.
Great, Matt.
To add to that, I think Jason calls out some really good examples. Department of Energy certainly has some programs that they're putting into alternative energy and some funding that they're putting into alternative renewable energy on the education side. That's a good place to look. National Science Foundation as well is a really good place to look, as well as the Institute, SESME, for example, in California, is putting a tremendous amount of money into this space as well.
Great, thanks, gentlemen. Matt, I'll leave it to you to wrap up.
All right. Well, thank you, Melissa. It's been a pleasure being with you. It's been a real pleasure having my friend Jason Everett on with us today. So Jason, we really appreciate you being on with us. Tune in next week. We are doing a series most of the summer around industrial training, whether you're an industrial employer, whether you are somebody that works in the B&I function of your local technical community college, whether you're somebody that works right in industry, training people already in the workforce. And so we've got a really interesting group of sessions coming up for you all summer. Watch your email, because I know they'll be tagged for the people that registered for this particular session. So really want to thank everybody for joining us on this edition of Webinar Wednesday. We are here every single Wednesday at 2 o'clock talking about best practices in technical education. We look forward to seeing you back next week.